So, it's decided, she asked in a shaky voice. You've already found someone. Victor stood as well, feeling desperation wash over him. Nothing is decided unless you agree, he said quickly. If you say no, I will cancel everything. But I saw how unhappy you were. I saw you losing hope. I thought if I did this, at least the world would leave you alone. Maybe our prayers would even be answered through her. And I will have to watch another woman give you what I couldn't. In the bustling city of Calabar, there lived a couple named Victor and Odwak. They had been married for 18 long years. Their home, though filled with love and understanding, often echoed with an unsettling silence. In the evenings, Victor would return from work and find Odwak sitting quietly on the veranda, watching the world outside. The sounds of the neighborhood children's laughter, street vendors calling out their wares, neighbors chatting over fences floated around him. But inside Victor and Odrak's small house, it was often as quiet as a library. There was no patter of little feet and no playing giggles echoing down the hallway. The years of waiting for a child weighed heavily on both of them. Initially, in the first year or two of marriage, they hadn't been worried. They believed that in time, Odwak would conceive and they would start a family just like everyone else. They set up a small nursery room with a crib and painted the walls a soft yellow in anticipation of the baby they were sure would come. Victor would often tease Odwak, maybe we'll have twins right away, who knows? And they would both laugh at the thought. But as months turned into years, their laughter began to fade. The crib remained empty and gathered dust. Every new month brought a wave of hope for Odwak, followed by a crash of disappointment. She would sometimes secretly buy a pregnancy test and hold her breath in the bathroom, praying for a positive result, only to see just a single line on the stripe. Each time this happened, she felt a piece of her heart crack. Still, she tried to hide her tears from Victor, not wanting him to worry or feel like he was failing her. Victor, on his part, put on a brave face for his wife. It's all right, my love, he would say gently, wiping away her tears whenever he discovered them. It will happen when it's meant to happen. We have each other, and that is enough for now. But behind closed doors, he too felt a profound sadness. He dreamed of coming home to a child running up to greet him, of hearing the word "Daddy" shouted with joy. He often lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, silently asking God why it was taking so long. Outside their home, the world was not so kind or understanding. In their community, a couple married for so long without children was a curiosity at best and a target for gossip at worst. Victor and Odwak sometimes felt invisible in social gatherings, or worse, felt like they were seen as unfortunate cautionary tale. If they tried to offer advice or share an opinion at community meetings or family gatherings, someone might respond with a dismissive remark, implying that without children, their perspective was less valid. One sunny afternoon, Odwak had walked down the street to buy vegetables at the local market. As she stopped by a stall to pick out some fresh tomatoes, she overheard two women, neighbors from down the road, talking in hushed tones nearby. They didn't realize Odwak was within earshot. 18 years, and nothing to show for it. One of the women, Auntie Lizzie, clucked her tongue. Such a shame. All the money they are spending on themselves. If only they had a child. I even heard someone say it's like a curse. The other woman, Esther, whispered back. Imagine what if it's contagious? I told my daughter not to run errands for that woman again. You never know. Odrak's hands trembled as she paid for her tomatoes. Her throat felt tight. She quickly walked away before the women could notice her. Their words had stung deeply, like salt rubbed into an open wound. She felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she fought them back until she was safely home. At home, she sank into the living room sofa, the bag of vegetables forgotten on the kitchen counter. The house was quiet, save for the distant sound of a radio playing in a neighbor's house. Odrak finally let the tears flow, burying her face in her hands. She wondered if this was how everyone saw her, as a cursed woman, a failure, as a wife. That evening, when Victor came home, he found the normally tidy kitchen in slight disarray and his wife sitting in the semi-darkness. He immediately knew something was wrong. Gently, he sat down next to her and took her hand. Odrak, what happened? He asked softly. Odrak hesitated. She didn't want to upset him, but the pain in her heart was too heavy to contain. Through quiet sobs, she told him about the conversation she overheard at the market. Victor's face tightened with anger and hurt as he listened. He put her into a comforting embrace. How can people be so cruel? He muttered, trying to keep his voice calm. Listen to me, Odrak. You are not cursed, and this is not your fault. Those who talk do not understand the will of God. We'll have our own children someday, and even if it takes more time, I don't want you to feel less than who you are. You are my wife, and I love you more than anything. Odrak nodded against his shoulder, finding solace in his words. Still, the fear lingered in her heart. What if someday never comes, she thought, though she did not say it aloud. The pressure did not only come from neighbors or strangers. Perhaps the most painful comment came from within Victor's own family. Victor's mother, Margaret, was a straightforward woman who believed in speaking her mind. From the early years of the marriage, she had been anxious to have grandchildren from her eldest son, Victor. As year after year passed with no pregnancy, Margaret's concern turned into frustration, and her frustration sometimes turned into harsh words directed at Odrak. One Sunday afternoon, after the extended family had attended church together, Victor and Odrak joined his relatives for a small family lunch at his mother's house. No sooner had they finished eating than Margaret cleared her throat loudly and addressed Odrak directly in front of everyone. Odrak, she said, her tone stern, when will you give this family a child? Do you expect my son to wait forever to become a father? Odrak felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She opened her mouth, but no words came. She could feel the eyes of Victor's siblings and cousins on her, some filled with pity, others with impatience. Victor immediately reached over to place a protective hand on Odrak's shoulder. Mother, please, he said. This is not something we have control over. Don't embarrass us like this. But Margaret was not deterred. I'm saying what everyone is thinking, she responded sharply. It's been 18 years. If there is a problem, maybe we need to find a solution. In our day, a man in this situation would take in another wife to carry on the family name. A heavy silence fell over the table. Odrak's heart pounded in her chest. She stared down at her hands, blinking back tears, wishing the ground would open up and swallow her. Victor's younger sister, Rose, tried to change the subject by offering more fruit to everyone, but the damage was done. That night, back at home, Odrak finally let out the anguish that had been building up. She and Victor sat on their bed in darkness, a single dim lamp casting a soft glow in the corner of the room. Odrak's voice trembled as she spoke. Maybe Mama is right, Victor. Maybe it's me. Maybe I am the problem. I can't give you a child. I have failed you. And I have failed this family. Victor felt a stab of pain in his chest. He held Odrak's hands firmly. Don't say that. You have not failed anyone. There is no one to blame here. He took a deep breath, struggling to keep his own composure. If anyone has failed, maybe I have. No, Odrak interrupted, shaking her head. It's not you. I've gone for tests, and they said nothing is wrong with me. You did tests too, and everything was fine with you. I don't understand why God has kept us waiting this long. Her voice broke on the words, and fresh tears rolled down her face. Victor drew her into his arms. They had visited doctors and specialists a few years ago. When the 10-year mark passed without a baby, all the medical tests had come back normal for both of them. An outcome that was both relieving and frustrating. Relieving because there was no identifiable health issue, but frustrating because it meant they had no clear solution to find their childlessness. We may not understand it, Victor said softly, stroking her back. But I believe God has a plan for us. We must keep our faith. Odrak nodded, wiping her tears. She tried to hold on to hope, but it felt like trying to cup water in her hands. It kept slipping through her fingers with each passing year. The pressure from Victor's family did not let up. In fact, after that Sunday lunch confrontation, Margaret rallied two of Victor's uncles to speak to him privately. They cornered him after church the next week, while Odrak was chatting with a friend. Uncle Edward spoke first, placing a hand on Victor's shoulder. My son, he began. We know you love your wife, Odrak. Yes, Odrak is a good woman, oh, but it has been so many years. You need an heir. Every man wants to hear the sound of children in his home. Uncle Ben nodded in agreement. You have been patient, Victor. But perhaps it is time to consider our customs. In our family, we don't abandon a man's lineage to fate. There is no shame in taking a second wife if the first cannot bear children. Our ancestors did it, and it's still done today when needed. Victor felt a swell of anger and discomfort. He respected his uncles and loved his mother, but this was his marriage they were talking about. Uncle, I appreciate your concern, oh, he answered carefully. But this isn't a decision to take lightly. Odrak and I are praying for a child. We still have hope. Margaret, who had been standing by listening, chimed in with a huff. Hope? Hope? She said. I have been hoping for nearly 2 decades for a grandchild from you. I'm not getting younger, Victor. Do you want me to die without holding my grandchildren? Victor's jaw tightened. Mother, please. This is hard enough for us without... He started, but his mother waved him off. You are the man of the house, she said firmly. Sometimes, a man has to make hard decisions for the good of the family. If Odrak truly loves you, she will accept it. It's for the best. Victor felt trapped and troubled. He looked over to where Odrak was standing across the courtyard, smiling politely at something a church friend was saying, unaware of the conversation happening on the other side of the yard. She looked weary, yet graceful as always. His heart ached. He couldn't imagine bringing another woman into their lives. He knew how much it would hurt Odrak. He had promised her and himself that he wouldn't ever consider it. For years, despite the hints and suggestions from some relatives, Victor had stood firm. He reassured Odrak and himself that they would wait, that love was enough. But lately, he saw how deeply the constant gossip and ridicule was cutting into Odrak's spirit. He worried about her emotional state. She rarely laughed anymore and had grown quieter, as if trying to shrink away from society's judgment. At home that night, Victor tossed and turned in bed. Odrak slept fitfully beside him. He knew she had nightmares sometimes. She would whimper in her sleep, as if reliving painful confrontations. And he would gently wake her and calm her down. This night, as he lay there wide awake, Victor found himself staring at the ceiling once more, grappling with a terrible dilemma. He whispered a prayer into the darkness. God, please guide me. I only want to do what's right. In the weeks that followed, Margaret did not relent. She sent a distant cousin, an older woman from the village, to speak to Uduak. This cousin, Agnes, arrived at their home one afternoon when Victor was still at work. Agnes pretended her visit was casual, but she quickly steered the conversation toward children. My dear, you know I have always liked you, Agnes began, sitting with Uduak in the living room and sipping the cold orange juice Uduak offered. I remember when you married our Victor, you were all so happy. But happiness in a marriage, you see, it always comes from children. Don't you agree? Uduak felt her stomach knot. She managed a weak smile. Auntie, we're still praying and trying. We know children are a blessing. Agnes leaned in, her voice lowering as if sharing a secret. Sometimes, my dear, answers to prayers come in unexpected ways. What if God's plan is to bring children to this family through another woman? Would it be so bad? You could raise the children as your own too. Uduak gripped her hands tightly in her lap. Auntie Agnes, Victor and we haven't discussed such an idea. I don't think I could accept that. Her voice trembled slightly. Agnes patted her knee. I know it's not easy to think about, but think of Victor. He needs a child to carry on his name. And think of Margaret and how her heart aches for a grandchild. You have to be strong for them. If you truly love your husband, you might consider allowing him to do this. It could even be your idea. As a sacrifice, everyone will respect you for it. By the time Agnes left, Uduak was shaking and emotionally exhausted. That evening, she broke down and told Victor about the visit. She sobbed as she repeated Agnes's words. They want me to ask you to marry someone else, Victor. They want me to sacrifice my happiness. They think I'm not woman enough to give you a child. Victor felt anger flare inside him like a hot flame. He had not known about Agnes' visit. Clearly his mother was going behind his back now. He held Uduak close as she cried. I will talk to them. This has to stop, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. You are everything to me, Uduak. I don't want another wife. I only want you. And he meant it. At that moment, Victor was resolved to shut out his family's pressures entirely. For the first time in his life, he raised his voice to his mother the next day, telling her in no uncertain terms to stop meddling and stop sending people to his home without suggestion. Margaret backed off, upset with her son's tone, but she felt vindicated privately. She genuinely believed she was doing what was best for him, even if he couldn't see it. Months went by peacefully after that confrontation, or at least outwardly peaceful. Victor's family stopped mentioning the second wife idea, at least in front of the couple. Victor and Uduak tried to focus on each other and their faith. They spent more time together, attempting to rekindle the happiness they used to share without the shadow of others' expectations looming over them. They went for evening walks in their neighborhood, enjoying the breeze that sometimes wafted from the creeks that surrounded Calabar. They cooked together, went to church and joined the community service activities, and leaned on each other for companionship. Over time, the sharp pain of those harsh words began to dull just a little. However, in the quiet of the night, when all was still, the emptiness inside their home was unmistakable. On one such night, Uduak found herself drawn to the small room that held the unused crib and baby things they had prepared long ago. Moonlight slanted through the window, illuminating motes of dust in the air. She gently ran her hand over the wooden crib's edge and felt tears gather in her eyes. She closed them and whispered a prayer. Dear God, if you hear me, please, just one child. That's all we ask for. Just one to fill this silence. Unknown to her, Victor had woken and noticed she wasn't in bed. He quietly stepped to the doorway and saw his wife standing there in the moonlit nursery. His heart clenched at the sight. He walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. She didn't startle. Instead, she leaned back against him, placing her hands over his. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. "Me neither," he replied. For a long moment, they stood in silence in that little room, united in both their love and their shared longing. Finally, Victor spoke into the stillness. "No matter what happens, we have each other. You are my family, Uduak." She turned in his arms to face him. "And you are mine," she responded, wiping her cheek. They held each other close, letting the quiet of the night speak the words they couldn't express. Just when Victor and Uduak thought the matter of a second wife had been firmly put to rest, fate took a different turn. One of Victor's cousins was getting married, and the entire extended family was invited to the wedding in another town. Victor and Uduak traveled together to attend. It was a grand occasion. The hall was filled with music and laughter, and the bride and groom danced joyfully, surrounded by friends and relatives. During the festivities, however, a distant relative made a joke to Victor that cut deep. "Victor!" called out a boisterous uncle during a toast. "We'll come and drink at your own naming ceremony soon, eh? Abby? Or should we be preparing for another wedding first?" The guests who heard it chuckled, including some who knew exactly what he was implying. Uduak, who stood beside Victor, felt her face go hot, humiliation washing over her. She wished she could disappear. Victor forced a smile at the uncle but said nothing, pulling Uduak a little closer to his side protectively. That night, back in their hotel room, the incident sparked a long conversation between husband and wife. Uduak spoke first, voice barely above a whisper as she sat on the edge of the bed. "I can't keep doing this, Victor. Attending these gatherings. Always being reminded of what we don't have. It hurts so much." Victor knelt in front of her and held her hands. "I know," he said, his voice heavy. "I'm so sorry. I wish I could shield you from all of it." She looked into his eyes, seeing his own pain reflected there. "I know you stood up to your family, but what if they are right? What if it's never going to happen for us and we are just torturing ourselves?" Victor's grip on her hands tightened slightly. "You can't think like that. We have to believe." "Believe for how long?" Uduak cut in, a tremor in her voice. "Another year? 5 more? 10? We are not young anymore, Victor. I am 41. You are in your late 40s. Sometimes I wonder if maybe you should just do what they said." Victor looked at her in surprise and a bit of alarm. "Uduak, don't say that. You don't mean it." She gave a bitter, tearful laugh. "I don't want it. God knows I don't. But I can't stand seeing you unhappy. I feel like I have ruined your chance to be a father. At least, if you took another wife." She couldn't finish the sentence, choking on the words. Victor placed a hand gently under her chin, lifting her face, so she had to meet his eyes. "Stop. You have not ruined anything. I choose you because I love you. I still love you. I will always love only you, Uduak." Uduak broke down in sobs and fell into his arms. He held her tightly, rocking her a bit as he murmured soothing words. But inside, Victor felt his resolve weakening. Seeing Uduak like this, ready to sacrifice her own happiness out of a sense of guilt, was unbearable. He thought of all the years they had waited and all the pain they had endured. What if she was right? What if it never happened? That sleepless night in the hotel, Victor weighed the same question over and over. Remembered how once Uduak had been full of life and laughter, the kindest soul he had ever met. Now she was broken-hearted and weary. Perhaps taking another wife might ironically give Uduak some peace from the constant blame. If the second wife bore a child, at least the gossip and ridicule might cease, and Uduak could live without everyone staring at her like she was inadequate. It was an agonizing decision, one that Victor didn't even want to think about. But by the time dawn's light crept from the window, Victor had reached a painful conclusion in his mind. He would do it, not because he wanted to, but because he felt he was out of options. He could not watch the woman he loved suffer any longer. If having a child by any means would stop the hurtful talk and heal her wounded spirit, then maybe, just maybe, this was the path he had to take. He didn't tell Odrak right away. He couldn't bring himself to say the words, knowing how much it would hurt her despite her suggestion the night before. They returned to Calabar with heavy hearts. Over the next few weeks, Victor quietly made inquiries within the community, asking discreetly if anyone knew of a young woman who might be open to marriage. It made him feel guilty and sick, like he was betraying Odrak. He came home each day and acted as normal as he could, but inside, his heart was in turmoil. Eventually, through a colleague at his workplace, Victor was introduced to a young woman named Angela. She was in her late 20s, educated and polite. Angela knew upfront that Victor was already married and that the marriage was childless. Her family, it turned out, was eager to see her settled because she was approaching 30 and still single. To them, a stable man like Victor, even as a second husband to her, was better than an uncertain future alone. Angela herself said she wanted a family and was willing to be part of this arrangement if it meant she could have a secure home and children of her own someday. Victor met with Angela a few times in public places to discuss expectations and ensure she understood the situation. He was honest that his first wife, Odrak, was deeply hurt by their lack of children and that this step was being taken because of that. Angela expressed that she sympathized with Odrak's plight. "I will not try to make trouble," Angela promised gently during one of their conversations. "I just want a chance to be a mother as well. I hope we can all live in peace." With a heavy heart, Victor eventually brought the matter to Odrak. One evening, he asked her to sit with him at the dining table after dinner, reaching across to hold her hand. His face was grave, and Odrak knew something serious was coming. "I've been thinking about what you said at the hotel about taking another wife," Victor began quietly. He felt her hand tense in his, and he squeezed it reassuringly, even as his own voice faltered. "I never wanted to hurt you, and I still don't. You're my partner in everything. But maybe it's time we tried something different to have a child." Odrak's eyes filled with tears immediately. Hearing him say it out loud was like a blow, even though she had suggested it in despair. She withdrew her hand and covered her mouth, trying to stifle a sob. Victor's throat tightened. He moved his chair closer to her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Please, hear me out," he said gently. "I have met someone. Her name is Angela. I haven't done anything yet, but she's willing to come into our home as a second wife." He could hardly get the last words out, his voice thick with emotion. Odrak stood up, walking a few steps away, then turned to face him. Tears streamed down her face. "So, it's decided?" she asked in a shaky voice. "You've already found someone?" Victor stood as well, feeling desperation wash over him. "Nothing is decided unless you agree," he said quickly. "If you say no, I will cancel everything. But I saw how unhappy you were. I saw you losing hope. I thought if I did this, at least the world would leave you alone. Maybe our prayers would even be answered through her. And I will have to watch another woman give you what I couldn't." Odrak finished for him bitterly. She sank back into the chair, buried her face in her hands and sobbed openly. Victor felt tears in his own eyes now. He knelt beside her chair, holding her as best as he could. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I hate that it has to come to this. If you don't want her to come, she won't. I promise you. I'll find another way to make you happy, Odrak." For a long time, they stayed like that, with Odrak crying and Victor apologizing, both their hearts breaking At length, Uduak's sobs subsided into sniffles. She wiped her face with trembling hands. It already feels like she's here, she said quietly. Just the thought of it. She looked at Victor, her eyes red and full of sorrow. Do you care for her? No, Victor said immediately. I barely know her. There is no love there. It's only for children. Uduak nodded slowly. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, she spoke in a whisper. If this is what it takes for us to have a child, then who am I to stand in the way? They have all said it's my fault anyway. Maybe this is the only solution left. Victor wanted to tell her that it wasn't her fault at all, and that this might not even solve anything, but the words tangled in his throat. The truth was, he didn't know if this would solve anything either. He was running on faith and desperation. In the following weeks, arrangements were made quietly. Victor and Angela had a simple court marriage without much fanfare. He couldn't bring himself to celebrate it publicly. It felt wrong to celebrate something that caused Uduak pain, so only a few people knew. Of course, his immediate family knew, and they were relieved and congratulated him in private. Margaret even cried tears of joy when Victor told her, hugging him and saying, "You have made the right choice, my son. You won't regret it." Victor could only manage a thin laugh, not sharing her enthusiasm. Angela moved into Victor and Uduak's home as quietly as possible. Uduak, showing grace and strength, even in heartbreak, helped prepare a spare room for the new wife. It was perhaps the hardest thing she ever had to do in her life, laying fresh sheets and placing new pillows on the bed of the woman who was to share her husband. She did it with trembling hands and silent prayers. Angela, for her part, was respectful and tried not to overstep boundaries. She addressed Uduak as Sister Uduak or sometimes just Ma, out of respect. Given Uduak was much older than her, Angela tried to be helpful around the house, cooking meals and doing chores to ease the household burden. The atmosphere in the house was polite, but painfully awkward. Victor moved between his two wives carefully, trying to give attention to Angela to make her feel welcome, while also reassuring Uduak that she was still loved. It was a delicate balance, and many evenings ended in tension or quiet sadness, despite everyone's attempts to be civil. Late at night, Uduak often cried herself to sleep softly, stifling the sounds into her pillow so that Victor wouldn't hear and feel even more guilty than he already did. She kept reminding herself that she had agreed to this for a reason, and that perhaps a baby would come, and then all this sacrifice would feel worth it. Still, it was a heavy cross to bear. Surprisingly, it wasn't Angela who conceived first. Barely 2 months after Angela had joined the family, Uduak fell ill one morning. She woke up feeling dizzy. At first, she dismissed it as stress or maybe something she ate. Angela, concerned, brought her a glass of water and insisted she rest. Victor hovered worriedly, asking if they should go to the hospital, but Uduak insisted it was nothing serious. However, when the sickness persisted day after day, a tiny spark of hope ignited in Uduak's heart. Could it be? She wondered, hardly daring to finish the thought. Her period was late as well, something she had stopped tracking closely after so many years of heartbreak. But now, it dawned on her that she was indeed overdue. One quiet morning, after Victor had left for work, Uduak decided to find out the truth. She didn't want to raise false alarms with Victor until she was sure. She took a little trip to the pharmacy a few streets away and bought a pregnancy test kit. Her hands trembling with both fear and anticipation as the pharmacist handed it to her. She returned home, greeted by Angela, who was hanging laundry in the backyard. Uduak managed a tight smile and slipped inside without explaining. In the privacy of her bathroom, Uduak prayed fervently before taking the test. She closed her eyes as she waited for the result, whispering, "Dear God, please let it be positive. Please, God." She opened her eyes and looked down. Uduak blinked, thinking her eyes were deceiving her. She picked up the test strips with shaking hands and brought it closer. Two unmistakable lines. It was positive. It was positive. A shocked gasp escaped her lips, and she sank to her knees on the tiled bathroom floor. "Thank you, God! Thank you!" she cried. tears of joy streaming down her face. She was trembling all over. After 18 long years, after so many tears and prayers, here it was, a miracle growing inside her. Angela had the commotion and knocked on the bathroom door, concern in her voice. Sister Uduak, are you okay? Uduak quickly tried to compose herself, realizing she had cried out loud. She stood up and opened the door. Her eyes were wet with tears, but this time they were tears of happiness. Angela looked startled, unsure of what was happening. For a moment, Uduak considered hiding the news. Part of her had lived in fear of false alarms and disappointment for so long. But this was too big to hide, and it wouldn't be fair. Taking a deep breath, she said in a shaky voice, Angela, I'm fine. I just find out I'm pregnant. Angela's eyes widened in surprise. For a second, an unreadable expression crossed her face, perhaps a mix of shock, confusion, and something else. But then she broke into a genuine smile. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful news, Angela exclaimed. She impulsively hugged Uduak, who was caught off guard, but then embraced her back. In that moment, any unease between them melted away in the face of such incredible news. They both knew they needed to tell Victor as soon as possible. Uduak was practically glowing with excitement and nervous energy. She decided to surprise him when he returned from work. Angela helped her set the table, especially that evening, and even bought a small cake from a nearby bakery with inscription "Congratulations" on it. They kept it hidden until Victor would arrive. When Victor walked through the front door that evening, he immediately sensed a different atmosphere in the house. He found Uduak and Angela together in the living room, both looking up at him with anticipation. He was worried for a moment. Such an unusual reception made him think something bad had happened. Is everything okay? He asked, his eyes darting between his two wives, trying to read their expressions. Uduak stepped forward, unable to contain the smile on her face. Her eyes were shining with tears of joy she was holding back. Everything is perfect, she said softly. Victor, I have some news for you. Victor's heart pounded. Uduak took his hands in hers and looked into his eyes. I'm pregnant, she announced, voice quivering with happiness. For a second, Victor just stared, not comprehending. What did you say? He whispered, thinking he might have heard wrong. I'm pregnant, Uduak repeated, laughing and crying at the same time now. We are going to have a baby, Victor. You are going to be a father. A sound that was half laugh, half sob burst from Victor's chest. Pregnant? Truly? God, is this real? He said as he pulled her into a tight hug, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around once. He started laughing, a joyous, almost delirious laugh, and tears rolled down his cheeks. Thank you, Lord, he exclaimed, overcome with emotion. Angela stood by, tears in her own eyes at the touching scene. It was a complex moment for her too. She had joined this family thinking she would be the one to bring a child, yet here it was Uduak who miraculously conceived. But Angela's heart was kind. She felt genuine happiness for them. Victor released Uduak and then did something neither woman expected. He put Angela into a hug as well, wrapping one arm around each woman. It was a bit awkward, but in that spontaneous moment of gratitude, he wanted to embrace his whole family. Thank you, he said to Angela softly, knowing that despite any complicated feelings, she had been supportive today. This is a blessing for all of us. They brought out the cake and shared it. It was a quiet little celebration, but the house felt different now, felt warm and bright, and if hope itself was glowing from the walls. The news of Uduak's pregnancy spread quickly among close family and friends. Those who had quietly scorned or gossiped about the couple were astonished. Some even refused to believe it until they saw Uduak's belly growing with their own eyes. Margaret was beside herself with joy. She visited the very next day after hearing the news, practically dancing into the house. Where is my daughter? She called out excitedly, referring to Uduak. For the first time in many years, she addressed Uduak warmly. She enveloped Uduak in a big hug. Oh, God has done it. God has done it, Uduak. Thank you for making me a happy mother. You will see, this child will open the door for more blessings. Uduak, who had been understandably wary for her mother-in-law ever since the older woman's harsh treatment, was touched by Margaret's sincere excitement and newfound kindness. Udak smiled and said, Mama, thank God. We are all grateful to God. Neighbors, who had once whispered behind their backs, now came forward with congratulations and perhaps a hint of sheepishness. Auntie Lizzie from the market even brought a basket of fruits and vitamins, saying, I heard the good news, my dear. You must keep your strength up. Carrying a baby at this age, God is truly wonderful, isn't he? Udak accepted the gift politely, understanding the subtext that Auntie Lizzie never expected this would happen. It was okay. Nothing could dim her happiness now. In the months that followed, Udak experienced the ups and downs of pregnancy. Morning sickness visited her frequently in the early days. Angela often held her hair back and rubbed her back during bouts of sickness, bringing her water and making ginger tea to soothe her stomach. This unexpected sisterhood formed between the two women. They were bonded by this extraordinary situation and the life growing inside Udak. Victor was the definition of a doting husband. He accompanied Udak to every prenatal appointment, hovering protectively. They went to a well-known hospital in Calabar for checkups. During the first ultrasound scan, the doctor confirmed that the pregnancy was progressing well and even managed to determine the baby's gender. It looks like a boy, the doctor announced, pointing to the screen where a tiny form was visible. A boy, Victor whispered in awe, squeezing Udak's hand. A son. The thought filled him with pride and gratitude. Udak was equally overjoyed. She would have been happy with either gender, but knowing a son was on the way seemed to please the family even more, especially Margaret, who could not stop boasting to her friends at church that her son was finally having a son of his own. With the gender known, the couple quietly started discussing names. They both agreed the name should reflect gratitude. They considered names like Nathaniel, meaning gift of God, or Theodore, meaning God's gift as well. But also, like Miracle as a middle name, perhaps, given the circumstances. They kept these talks between themselves, savoring the joy of finally planning for a baby that was really coming. All the while, Victor did not neglect Angela. He felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt toward her. Gratitude because she had been considerate and kind throughout this time, and guilt because her own hopes were perhaps now in hold or uncertain. He made sure she felt secure, reassuring her that she was part of the family. Your time will also come, Angela, he would say kindly whenever he noticed her looking a bit lonely or wistful as the baby preparations went on. Thank you for being so supportive to Udak. Angela would usually smile and say she was fine and that she was genuinely happy for them all. As the months passed and Udak's belly grew round and full of promise, anticipation filled the home like a warm fragrance. Every gentle kick reminded her of the long-awaited blessing forming within her. One peaceful night, just as Victor was helping her settle into bed, a sharp wave of pain washed over her. She gasped, clutching her stomach. The contractions continued, stronger and more frequent, until she could no longer stand on her own. Victor, trembling with excitement and fear, hurriedly helped her into the car and rushed her to the hospital. The drive felt like hours, though it lasted only minutes. His heart pounded louder than the engine itself. At the hospital, nurses hurried around them, ushering Udak into the maternity ward. Victor held her hand tightly until he was asked to wait outside, his knees weak, palms sweaty, whispering prayers, beneath shaky breath. Through muffled cries and the bustle of midwives, he heard the words, "Push!" echo down the corridor. Moments turned into hours, and just when exhaustion threatened to claim her strength, Udak had the first powerful cry of a newborn. Relief washed over her like cool water, until the doctor's voice, gentle, interrupted. "There's another baby coming," and then another. The room erupted into astonished joy as three perfect little miracles arrived one after the other, leaving everyone speechless at the sight of God's overflowing grace. When Udak and the triplets were finally discharged, the journey back home felt like a grand procession. As the car pulled into the compound, family members, neighbors, and church friends poured in with joy, songs, and gifts tied in colorful ribbons. Pots of steaming pepper soup and warm jollof rice were carried in by eager hands, while the sound of laughter echoed through the once quiet house. But no one was more radiant than Margaret, the woman who once fitted and whispered, now hovered protectively around Odrak, spoon-feeding her broth, adjusting her pillows, and proudly introducing each baby by name to every visitor, as though she had personally delivered them. She refused to let anyone raise their voice near the infant, shooing people away if they lingered too long. My daughter must rest, she insisted, fanning Udrak gently while humming a praise song. As she rocked one of the babies to sleep, tears glimmered in her eyes. It was clear to everyone present. This miracle had softened her heart, humbled her spirit, and filled her with a gratitude she could barely contain. Nearly 2 years flew by. Victor and Odrak, though often tired, relished every moment of parenting their 3 boys. They celebrated the triplets' first birthday with a small party, just family and a few close friends. Margaret practically lived at their house these days, spoiling her grandsons. Every chance she got, it was simple celebration with 3 tiny cakes, one for each toddler to smash, which they did with adorable enthusiasm and lots of laughter. Everyone joked about how one child wasn't enough for God. He gave them a bonus bundle of 3 at once. As the children grew from wobbly toddlers into energetic little boys, the household bustled with activity. There were endless rounds of feeding and bathing, chasing after the little ones as they tottered around on chubby legs, and cleaning up spilled cups or crayon marks on the walls. The once quiet home in Calabar was now often delightfully chaotic, filled with the sounds of giggles and the occasional wails that quickly turned back to laughter. Victor often came home from work to find at least one son clinging to Udrak's leg, while another played with pots and pans on the kitchen floor. He would scoop them up, one in each arm, marveling at how blessed he was to finally be called daddy over and over. Through it all, Angela remained a steady presence. She had become like part of the family, a trusted helper and friend. She had not borne any children for Victor since joining the household, but she poured her love into caring for Odrak and the boys. Sometimes, Odrak would catch a faraway look in Angela's eyes when Angela cradled one of the triplets who had fallen asleep in her arms. Perhaps Angela wondered when she would hold a child of her own. Still, she never voiced any bitterness, and the bond between the 2 women had grown warmer with time, forged by the shared work of raising the active little trio. Not long after the boy's second birthday, Odrak began to feel a familiar sickness in the mornings. At first, she brushed it off as exhaustion. Chasing 3 toddlers all day was enough to tire anyone out. But when she realized she was late by a couple of months, her heart started to pound with cautious hope. Could it be happening again? It seemed almost unbelievable, but the subtle signs were there. One sunny afternoon, Odrak went back to the same clinic where she had confirmed her first pregnancy. After a series of tests and an examination, the doctor smiled at her and said, "Congratulations, you're pregnant again." Odrak covered her face with her hands, overjoyed and stunned. She had dared not dream that she would conceive a second time. And here it was, a new miracle. The doctor performed an ultrasound to check on the baby's health. This time, only one tiny heartbeat was apparent. It looks like just one baby, and if I'm not mistaken, it's likely a girl. The doctor informed her kindly. A girl. The thought made Odrak's heart swell. She and Victor loved their boys dearly, and now a daughter would be a beautiful addition. On her way home, she whispered prayers for thanks. She decided to make the announcement to Victor and the family that evening, in a special way, just as they had done before. That night, after dinner, once the rambunctious boys were settled in bed, Odrak called Victor and Angela into the living room. She could hardly contain her smile. Victor looked at her curiously, noticing her excitement. She took his hands and took a deep breath. "Victor, God has blessed us again. I'm pregnant." Victor's eyes widened in astonishment. "Pregnant again?" he exclaimed. Then a grin spread across his face. "This is incredible. Thank you, God." He laughed in delight and embraced Odrak tightly. Little did they know, their joy was about to be multiplied once more, in a way none of them expected. Angela congratulated them sincerely. She was happy for the family. Though later that night, in the privacy of her room, she allowed herself a few tears a mix of joy for them and sorrow for her own situation. She quickly wiped her eyes and reminded herself that everyone's destiny was different. She resolved to continue helping the household through this next chapter, pouring her energy into making sure Udak had a safe and comfortable pregnancy. As the months passed, the family prepared for the arrival of the new baby girl. Udak's belly grew louder, and little boys were fascinated that a baby was a mama's tummy. They would pat her stomach and say, "Baby," with giggles, although they were too young to fully understand the changes to come. Victor repainted the nursery, this time a pale lilac color for their daughter. Neighbors and friends, who by now believed Victor and Udak to be especially favored by God, came around often with advice and gifts again. Margaret was overjoyed at the prospect of a granddaughter. "Now, I will have girls to pamper as well," she would say, bringing Udak maternity clothes and herbal soaps, fussing over her like a mother hen. Despite having experienced childbirth before, Udak was understandably nervous as her due date approached. The memory of how the first delivery turned into a dramatic triplet birth was still fresh. She asked the doctor multiple times during checkups, "You are sure it's just one baby?" The doctor would chuckle and reassure her that as far as medical equipment could tell, there was only one heartbeat and one baby in there. Still, Victor have jokingly prepared a bit of extra supplies at home, saying, "You never know, we should be ready for any surprise." Udak laughed, thinking it's extremely unlikely to have triplets again. But deep down, she prayed for a safe delivery, whether it was one baby or more. The day finally came on a calm morning when Udak felt the first contractions. They headed to the hospital once more. Victor and Angela were by her side as labor began. This time, the atmosphere was more experienced. They knew the drill, and Udak was determined and focused despite the pain. After several hours of labor, the moment of childbirth arrived. With one final push and a cry of relief from Udak, the first baby emerged. "It is a girl," announced the doctor, lifting the squalling newborn for the parents to see briefly. Udak wept tears of joy, reaching out to touch her daughter's tiny hand as the nurses cleaned the baby. But almost immediately, Udak felt another contraction rip through her. The doctor's eyes went wide. "There is another baby," he exclaimed in surprise. Victor, who was in the room holding Udak's hand, nearly fell off his stool. "Another? Again?" he shouted in disbelief, half laughing, half in shock. Before they could fully process it, within minutes, a second baby was born, crying lustily. "It's a boy," said a nurse. As she quickly tended to the newborn, Udak and Victor exchanged astonished looks. Twins. They had expected one daughter, and now they had a girl and a boy. But the surprises had not ended. Moments later, the medical team realized there was yet another tiny baby making its way into the world. In a flurry of activity, and with Udak summoning her remaining strength, she delivered a third baby. The doctor laughed out in amazement. "It's another girl, triplets again." Exhausted and overwhelmed, Udak could hardly believe her ears. She fell back against the pillows, crying and laughing all at once. Three babies, three new babies at once. History had repeated itself in the most unbelievable way. Victor was speechless, his hand over his mouth as he tried to steady himself. His eyes were filled with tears of joy and wonder as he looked at the three screaming infants. "We asked God for one daughter," he managed to say with a wet laugh, "and he gave us three babies instead, two girls and a boy. Oh my goodness." Soon, the new triplets were cleaned and swaddled, two daughters and one son, all miraculously healthy despite arriving slightly early. When Udak held them, her heart felt like it's my burst with happiness. Victor gently touched each baby's cheek, counting them again and again, almost as if to convince himself they were real. Angela, who had waited just outside during the critical moment, rushed in as soon as she heard the news. She gasped in amazement at the sight of three bundles. "God is truly great," she whispered, smiling and blinking back tears. She helped the nurses arrange the babies around a tired but radiant Udak, so the new mother could marvel at each one in turn. Calabar buzzed with the news that day. The couple who had been mocked for years was now the proud parent of not just three, but six children in total, two sets of triplets back to back. It seemed like a fairy tale or something out of a legend, but it was real. People from the neighborhood and church members trooped to the hospital and later to their home to celebrate and see the miracles with their own eyes. Victor and Udrak were overjoyed, but also, admittedly, a bit overwhelmed. Six young children under the roof would be a tremendous task, but they believed that the God who had given them these blessings would also provide the strength and resources to care for them. The months after bringing the second set of triplets home were both joyous and challenging. The house that was once quiet now sometimes felt like a lively daycare. Picture this: three toddlers running around, getting into every nook and cranny, while three newborns demanded feeding and changing around the clock. Day and night seemed to blur together for Victor and Odrak as they juggled six little ones. There were moments when two babies would be crying at once while a toddler was tugging on Victor's trouser, asking for a snack. The living room was often strewn with toys, baby blankets, and bottles. It was hectic, yes, but it was also the fulfillment of everything they had ever prayed for. Sometimes Victor would sit in the middle of the chaos, one child crawling over his back and another playing with his shoes, and he would just shake his head in amazement. I used to beg God for just one child, he told Odrak one evening. And now, look at us, six children in 4 years. I'm overwhelmed by his goodness. He was in his early 50s now, an age where some of his peers were sending their children off to uni. Yet, here he was changing diapers and learning the lyrics to cartoon-themed songs. He wouldn't trade it for the world. Angela remained in the home and was a tremendous help during this time. She had become an expert at soothing fussy babies and entertaining restless toddlers with stories or little games. She often carried one of the infants on her back in a soft wrap while stirring a pot of soup in the kitchen, multitasking with practiced ease. However, as the family settled into their new life with six children, Angela couldn't ignore the growing feeling that she didn't quite fit in the picture the same way. She had now been part of the household for a few years, and it was clear that Victor's heart and legacy were firmly rooted with Udrak and the children they had together. Angela had not become pregnant in all that time. In quiet moments, she acknowledged to herself that perhaps it was never meant to be for her here. One calm evening, after the second set of triplets were a few months old and finally asleep, Angela approached Udrak on the front porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple, and the air was finally cooler after a long humid day. From inside came the muffled sound of laughter as Victor was busy trying to get the older boys to wind down for bed. Angela took a deep breath and spoke softly. "Sister Udrak, I want to thank you," she began, "for how kind you have been to me. These last few years, you have treated me like family, like a true sister. Despite the awkward situation of our marriage, I will always be grateful for that." Udrak looked at Angela with concern and a touch of sadness, sensing where this might be leading. "Angela, your family," she replied. "We are brought together in a strange way, but you have earned a place in our hearts. I should be the one thanking you. You helped us so much, and you have been so graceful through everything." Angela offered a small bittersweet smile. "This house is full of joy. Seriously, it is," she said, gazing through the open door, where the sounds of the children echoed. "It makes me truly happy to see, but I think my part in this story has come to an end." Udak's heart skipped a beat. "Angela, you mean?" Angela nodded gently. "I came here to help bring children into this family, but God had his own plan, and he gave you the children directly. 6 beautiful children." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "I feel I was meant to be here for a season, to support you through all this, but I also believe it's time for me to move on and seek my own path." Udrak felt tears in her eyes. She reached out and took Angela's hand. "Are you unhappy here?" she asked quietly. "No, not unhappy," Angela assured her, "but I know I don't really fit anymore. This is your family, you, Victor, and the children. I'm like an aunt in the house now. I'm still young, and I want a chance to have my own family, my own husband who is just mine, and maybe children of my own someday. She hesitated, then added softly, if I stay here, that may never happen for me. A tear rolled down Odrak's cheek. I understand, she said, her voice trembling slightly. You deserve that chance, Angela. You have been so selfless with us, never causing any trouble, always giving. I would never want you to sacrifice your own dreams indefinitely. They sat together in silence for a long moment, hands clasped, understanding passing between them. As much as it saddened Odrak to see her go, she also felt that it was right. Angela had a life to live, and she deserved to find her own happiness. Have you spoken to Victor? Odrak asked eventually. Not yet, Angela replied. I wanted to talk to you first. We will support you in whatever you decide, Odrak promised. You will always be a part of our lives, Angela. Even if you live somewhere else, the children adore their Auntie Angela, and I hope you will visit them when you can. Angela nodded, wiping her eyes. Of course. I could never cut ties completely. I just feel it's time. My sister in another city has been asking me to come stay with her for a while. I think I will take her up on that and see what life has in store. When Angela and Odrak gently explained the decision to Victor later that night, he was quiet for a long time. He looked at the woman who had entered his life as part of a desperate gamble for children, and he felt both guilt and gratitude. I understand, Angela, he finally said. I can't thank you enough for everything you have done for us. You have a good heart. I'm sorry that I couldn't be the husband you deserve. You do deserve your own family and a man who loves you wholly. Angela shook her head. Please, don't apologize. We all did what we thought was best at the time. I have no regrets about being here. It taught me a lot about life and about love. And I have so many little ones now to love as my nephews and nieces. She managed a smile. That's a blessing too. Victor insisted that Angela be well provided for as she transitioned to her new life. A few weeks later, after many tearful goodbyes, Angela left the home quietly and without any animosity. They divorced. There was no dramatic incident or fight. She simply hugged each of the children tightly. The older boys looked confused that their beloved auntie was leaving and the babies just curled in her arms. Then she hugged Odrak and finally Victor. God bless you, Angela. Odrak whispered, tears in her eyes. God bless all of you too, Angela replied softly. I will miss you, but I will be okay. And with that, she was gone. Victor and Odrak stood at the doorway for a long time. After she left, arms around each other, absorbing the reality. Their family life would continue without Angela under their roof, but she would always remain dear to them. In the following days, when the older boys asked where Auntie Angela went, Odrak explained gently that she went to visit her relatives and would come by when she could. They accepted the answer and soon were distracted by their toys and games. Life moved forward. With Angela's departure, Victor and Odrak settled into a new routine. It wasn't easy handling 6 children on their own, but they managed with the help of relatives and an extra hired nanny during the day. The years passed in a blur of school runs, doctor visits for sniffles, birthday parties, and endless laundry. The triplet boys grew into sturdy 5-year-olds full of mischief, and the younger triplets toddled close behind them, eager to copy their older siblings. The house in Calabar was truly alive, often messy, often noisy, but always brimming with love. It was around this time that life prepared one more surprise for the family. In her mid-40s, Odrak did not expect to fall pregnant again. She and Victor were quite busy raising the 6 they had. But once again, she found herself feeling unusually tired and a bit sick. In the mornings, at first, she attributed it to the stress of keeping up with so many young children. However, a visit to the doctor confirmed what she and Victor hadn't even been daring to consider. Odrak was pregnant once more. This time, when she shared the news with Victor, he broke into a grin and shook his head in joyful disbelief. We don't do anything in small measure, do we? He joked, hugging her. God just keeps surprising us. Though they hadn't explicitly prayed for more children, they welcomed this development with open hearts. If God saw fit to bless them again, they were grateful. A 7th child was on the way, a true bonus on top of bonuses. At the ultrasound appointment, both of them held their breath, half expecting to hear they might be having yet another set of multiples. The doctor chuckled at their nervous faces. I can definitively say there is just one baby this time, she announced. And it's a boy. Victor and Udrak both sighed in relief and shared a laugh. The thought of managing triplets a third time was daunting. So, knowing it was one boy eased their minds. A baby boy on the way meant they would have 4 sons and 2 daughters from before. Plus, this little one would make it 5 boys in total. Truly a football team, Victor joked. Pregnancy at this stage of life was a bit harder on Odrak's body. She got tired more easily, and the doctor advised her to rest whenever possible. Victor doted on her, taking on even more of the household tasks and making sure she didn't overexert herself. The older children, now old enough to understand the bit, were excited that a new baby brother was coming. Odrak would guide their hands to feel when the baby kicked, and the kids would erupt into giggles and exclaim, "Baby brother is playing." Soon enough, the 9 months passed. Late on a balmy evening, Odrak went into labor, and what they knew would likely be the last time. Victor drove her to the hospital, their car, now a larger van, to accommodate their big family. On the way, they talked between contractions, marveling at how life had changed so drastically in just a few years. After this, our quiver is truly full, Victor said, referencing the psalm about children being like arrows in a warrior's quiver. Odrak laughed despite her pain. Absolutely full. A few hours later, Odrak gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Unlike the previous deliveries, there were no unexpected surprises, just a beautiful, singular miracle. When they placed the baby in Odrak's arms, she and Victor gazed down at him with overflowing love. He had big, curious eyes and a strong voice, letting out a hearty cry to announce his arrival. "Welcome to the world, little one," Odrak whispered, cuddling him close. Victor gently stroked the boy's soft cheek with a fingertip. His heart felt like it might burst as he silently thanked God yet again. Bringing their new son home, Victor felt a wave of emotion. Not too many years ago, he had walked through that same door with empty arms and a heart full of longing. Now he walked in carrying an infant car seat, greeted by a chorus of excited shouts. "Baby is home, baby is home," from the older children. The triplets, both sets, crowded around to get a peek. And their tiny brother, Margaret, who had come to help, clapped her hands and sang a joyful praise. Right there in the living room, unable to contain her gratitude. It was a sweet chaos once more, as the children argued over who would hold the baby first, with Mama sternly supervising so no one would drop him. One evening, after their newborn son had been home for a few months and the household had settled once again into a routine, Victor sat outside on the front step of their house. It was one of those rare peaceful moments when all the children were finally asleep. He gazed up at the starry sky, the warm night air filled with the distant sounds of cricket. His mind drifted over the incredible journey of the last several years. Remember the night he and Odrak used to sit in this very spot, two lonely souls praying for just one child. Remember the emptiness and the ache of those 18 years of waiting. And now, here he was in his 50s with 7 beautiful children under his roof. 7! Sometimes, even he could barely believe it. If someone had told him years ago that he would soon be a father of 7, including 2 sets of triplets, he would have thought them insane. Yet God had a plan all along, one that unfolded in its own perfect timing. Odrak came out quietly and sat beside him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. She leaned against Victor, and he put his arm around her. For a while, they simply enjoyed the calm night together, each lost in thought. Then Odrak broke the silence softly. "I was just checking on the children. They are all fast asleep." The older ones were hugging their baby brother, even in their sleep. She chuckled lightly. Victor smiled. "We have a wonderful family," he said. The simple words carried a world of meaning and gratitude. Odrak nodded. "Sometimes I ask myself, why did God make us wait so long? But then I think maybe it had to happen his way, So we will truly understand the value of what we have now. Victor sighed, a content but reflective sound. I do wonder that too, and I have one big regret, he admitted. Oduak tilted her head to look at him. What is it? Bringing Angela into our home, he said, voice low. Not because she wasn't good to us, she was, but because I wish I had trusted God a little longer and not given in to the pressure. We almost lost our way, thinking we had to solve it ourselves. If I had just waited, look what was in store. He gestured toward the door, where inside their children slept peacefully. God's time was different from ours, but it was worth the wait, 1,000 times over. I just feel sorry that I doubted, and sorry that Angela had to go through all that only to live without a child. Uduak rested her hand on his. We both stumbled under the weight of it, she said gently. I also thought of asking you to marry another, that at one point, we are desperate. But you were right. God still had a plan for us, and we nearly lost hope, she sighed. Yet, I believe everything turned out for a reason. Angela was with us in a difficult time, and she helped us. And maybe through that, she found her own path too. I pray she found happiness. We must not dwell on the what ifs too much. Victor nodded, absorbing her words. He knew Uduak was right. They had made the best decisions they could at the time with the information they had. In the end, grace had covered their mistakes and turned it into something beautiful. I heard from Angela recently, he mentioned. She wrote us a letter. She's doing well. Can you believe it? She met someone kind. They are talking about marriage. Uduak's face brightened. That's wonderful news. They sat quietly for a bit longer, thinking of their friend and wishing her well in their hearts. Then, their thoughts returned to their own blessings. Victor looked at Uduak, his eyes full of love and awe. Thank you for never giving up, for staying by my side through it all, he said. She smiled, her eyes moist. We held onto each other. That was enough, and look where it led us. From inside, as if on cue, the faint cry of the baby boy began to rise. Perhaps he sensed that his mama was not beside him. Both Victor and Uduak chuckled softly. Their peaceful moment was over, but it was okay. I will get him, Uduak said, starting to stand. No, let me, Victor insisted gently. You rest a bit more. As Victor went in to soothe their son back to sleep, Uduak lingered a moment longer under the night sky. Her heart was full as she whispered a prayer into the warm Calabar night. Thank you, God. Truly, your time is the best. In their once quiet house, now bursting with life and laughter, Victor and Uduak had learned one of life's greatest truths firsthand. No matter how long the night of sorrow lasts, joy comes in the morning, and God's time is always the best. The story teaches that patience, faith, and love can outlast shame and pressure. We should not judge or mock people for what they don't have, because only God knows each person's time and path. Gossip and family pressure can cause people into painful choices, so it's better to show kindness and support. A strong marriage stands when the couple holds each other, prays together, and refuses to blame one another. In the end, blessings can come in ways we never expect, reminding us that God's time is always the best. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Victor and Uduak on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with your journey, please show your love by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.